Well, good morning, this is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant morning. And over the last couple of months, as we've been sort of slowed down a bit, I wrote a couple of essays which I sent off for publication in a magazine called Dialogue, which I will link below, and they have both been published, or one is about to be published, one has been published, and so I'd like to read you my essay, and it's entitled The Gaslighting Phenomena in the Age of CV. And I hope you'll read between the lines on that, because I do not want to run into any problems with the YouTube algorithm. The term gaslighting has recently re-emerged into our general lexicon. When I talk to people about this expression, I notice that many have either not heard the expression or misinterpret its meaning and the deeper implications. Most will say it's tricking somebody, which is partially true, but does not fully cover what is going on. The term originated with the movie Gaslight, which is a 1940 British film directed by Thorold Dickinson, which stars Anton Walbrook and Diana Wynyard. I will also link that below. The gist of the story is Alice Barlow, Marie Wright, is murdered by an unknown man who then ransacks her house looking for her valuables and famous rubies. The house remains empty for years until newlyweds Paul and Bella Mallon, Diana Winwood, move in. We found out that Paul, Anton Walbrook, is the murderer and Bella is the granddaughter of Alice. Wanting to gain full control of the house and find the rubies but not being able to dispatch his wife in the same way as Grandma, he decides to have her committed to an asylum by way of insanity. He hatches a plan. He hides things like a brooch he bought her and then asks her if he can see it, which of course she cannot find. He moves things in the house around and claims nothing has changed. He breaks into the house next door, which is vacant, and turns the gas lighting on and off, up and down. This in turn affects the gas pressure next door in his own home, so that the lights also go up and down in response. Again, he denies to his wife that he saw this happen, and that it could not have happened. As time goes on, Bella starts to doubt her own mind and begins to have bouts of confusion and crying. Soon she is ready to see a psychiatrist to confirm what she fears most, that she is grown crazy. I won't spoil the ending, and you probably understand the plan by now. Gaslighting is a very real and dangerous phenomenon because it is designed not only to trick you, but to make you doubt your own sanity. Because you can see with your own eyes reality, and yet something just happened to defy that reality in a way that cannot be explained. This is very destabilizing to the human mind, and exactly as you see in the movie, the human mind falls into a state called cognitive dissonance. When humans are in that state, they are very susceptible to new programming. They may even accept options never before conceived, like going to see a psychiatrist when you're not actually crazy. The last time I felt this cognitive dissonance was on 9/11, when I watched two planes hit two buildings with absolute disbelief. It was so far out of my range of possibilities, outside of Hollywood that is, that I just couldn't comprehend what had just happened. As the media footage played the scene over and over, my stomach turned and I felt like I was floating about 3 feet over my body, suspended in disbelief, yet seeing the very thing I could not believe actually unfold before my eyes. Unable to think straight, unable to find an appropriate location in my brain to even put this information, let alone process it. This is cognitive dissonance, and I'm sure many of you felt the same way. In that moment, and in the days that followed, a war on terror was initiated. An invasion of a sovereign country on what turned out to be false pretenses went through basically on the nod. The Patriot Act, written incidentally in 1995 by Joe Biden, and the institution of the notion of Homeland Security. This led to unprecedented government spying on its own citizens at will. All of these things focused on one thing, the stripping down of your rights to privacy and freedom of speech. I believe we are seeing the same thing with CV. Don't misunderstand me, I'm not playing down the fact that influenza is a deadly seasonal predator that has been the bane of humankind for 250,000 years. It is the gaslighting through the unbelievable amounts of conflicting information about something that is supposed to be a civilization ender. In our part of Ontario, apart from 32 deaths in a nursing home, we haven't seen a death attributed to CV. The hospitals are empty. We've had no cases for over 3 months, and yet the rules are becoming more stringent. We've just had the mandatory mask order, which, as someone said, is like bringing a condom to a baby shower. The CDC say masks don't work, but we must wear one. But not if it's hot and humid, or if you have a belief system that forbids it, or if you're at the right political protest. BLM protests, no CV risk. Lockdown protests, a threat to humanity. A local man was recently shot to death by police in an issue that began over mask wearing and escalated into a confrontation. Our Premier announced that we must get children back to school based on a poll where 64% of parents were in favour of it. It's this flip-flop backwards and forwards between the pseudo-scientific and public opinion that does not make any sense after 2 seconds of critical thought. This leaves you no way to process the information. All along, the media are making us feel under pressure of intense fear, that you have to make a decision. This leaves people's minds reeling, at a time when people's businesses are going bust, rents are not being paid, and bills are piling up. At a time when we need to think clearly to address these difficult and desperate survival issues. I'm sure many of you feel like we're in a sci-fi movie, and anyone looking back to even December of last year or before could be forgiven for thinking how far away it seems from our present position, and yet it was only just over half a year, 9 short months ago. This is cognitive dissonance brought on by gaslighting. In the last 9 months we have lost our freedom of speech, lost the ability to voice an alternate opinion. Censorship on media platforms like Google, YouTube, Twitter, etc. is full blast shutting down wrongthink and directing you to correct government-approved information sites. We have lost freedom of assembly, access to justice, forcible confinement of healthy people, forced separation of families, bankrupting of small and often family businesses, worse, the bankrupting of our country. Most of this happened without full debate, and as we've just found out in Ontario, as an MPP, if you disagree with the emergency powers, you're fired. That is quite a list for 9 months. Like the things that were enacted after 9/11 to protect us from what we now see as an unrealistic threat compared to the billions of dollars of our money that was spent doing so, 20 years of the idea of the war on terror is embedded in our collective psyche, and no one questions the changes made. They became the new normal. Indeed, there are now generations that have known no other state. Until we understand the full psychological impact gaslighting is having on our minds and break free of its effects, before we forget entirely what life was like pre-CV, I fear that this march towards totalitarianism will continue unabated. These methods of mass control have been studied for years, and once again it's working perfectly. We are the only ones who can stop it, and the clock is ticking. How do you stop the effects of gaslighting? One of the biggest things is to recognize what is happening. When you see a contradiction, physically say to yourself, this doesn't make sense. Insist in your own mind that when you see contradictions from the people directing you, be suspicious and ask questions. Ask for an explanation. You deserve to know why, on the same page as a recommendation to wear face coverings to protect you, it tells you in bold print that face coverings won't protect you. These are clues that you are being gaslit. Think, for example, of a magician who pulls off an amazing trick. When you have seen the how-to video, suddenly the magic and amazement is taken out of the trick. Above all, remember that we have and always will have a right to free speech and to question authority, a right to assemble, a right to justice and a level playing field, a right to privacy and to ownership of land. Remembering who we are and the rights our forebears died for is a potent vaccine against gaslighting. So I hope you will bear that in mind, and that gaslighting is a very real psychological phenomena. It is having an effect. I can see it having an effect on people around me, and just beware of what is happening whilst the whole of society seems to be in this state of cognitive dissonance. As I said, we are very easy to program under these circumstances, and we are being programmed to accept a new reality. Now the good news is my next essay will be explaining why it is the fly in the soup of the whole plan that has been laid out before us. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant morning and weekend, and we'll talk very, very shortly. You take care now. Bye-bye.